Ontario, in many ways, is a bit like New South Wales. It's the most populous state in Canada. Its capital, Toronto, is the biggest city in Canada. But right now, Ontario is rapidly expanding its nuclear capacity to create business investment and also to meet and exceed its emissions targets. Nuclear energy, of course, will be a significant point of difference between the Labor government and the coalition at the next election. Labor's Climate Change and Energy Minister Chris Bowen says nuclear is too expensive and will take too long to develop compared with renewable energy. But is that right? Well, let's find out by exploring just what's happening on the ground in Ontario. A little earlier, I spoke with its Energy Minister, Todd Smith.
We have about 50 to 60% of our power comes from our nuclear fleet that we currently have at the 18 CANDU reactors that we have in the Toronto area and also on the western side of the province. But because of the success we've had in refurbishing the CANDU reactors, multi-billion-dollar projects on time, actually ahead of schedule and on budget, it's given us as the Government of Ontario the confidence to move forward with expanding our nuclear profile, and that includes an extra 5 gigawatts at what is already the world's largest operating nuclear facility at Bruce Power. And then at Ontario Power Generation, which is our Crown Corporation, we're refurbishing a number of the CANDU reactors, but we're also at the forefront in the Western world in building a small modular reactor. Construction is already underway, and we're going to be building 4 of these 300 megawatt GE Hitachi BWRX 300s on site at the Darlington reactor just outside Toronto. So that's another 1.2 gigawatts of electricity, or enough power to power 1.5 million homes.
So your state almost equates to our New South Wales, where Sydney is, because it has the biggest city in terms of Toronto. It's got about 45% of Canada's population lives in your state. And so this is a reason why having reliable energy, a reliable source of energy, is so important for your country, isn't it?
Yes, and it's why we're seeing investments in our province at a record rate. We're getting multi-billion-dollar investments from automakers, EV battery manufacturers, electric arc furnaces at our steel-making facilities to produce green steel. It's why our population is growing as fast as it is because we have reliable, affordable electricity that comes from our nuclear facilities, our hydro facilities as well. And, we're preparing for the future so we can continue to see these types of investments and growth in our province.
Okay, so you would know of the debate in Australia. Australia has never had a mandate for nuclear energy. That comes from a federal mandate, a federal ban on all nuclear-generated energy. Now, you hear, say, for example, from the Climate Council that nuclear energy, even if we were to go that way, it is too expensive and it would take too long to make a significant difference, either A, to our energy output, or B, to the climate change results that Australia is seeking.
Well, what I could tell you is that we're building a small modular reactor right now at Darlington. We put shovels in the ground in 2022. We expect to have that small modular reactor producing electricity by late 2028, early 29. So this is also going to be a modular build. We're going to be able to produce these faster once that first of a kind is complete at Darlington, and we'll be able to deploy these at sites right across the province, potentially. One of the things that we have been able to do is eliminate coal from our system, and I know that's something that you're aiming to do in Australia as well. And the biggest reason why we were able to eliminate coal was because we have that reliable baseload, emissions-free nuclear fleet that we continue to build on to ensure that we have a green system in Ontario. And it's one of the cleanest electricity grids in the entire world at about 90% emissions-free. So it's a great story. It's helped us eliminate coal from our system, and it's really only the nuclear investments that have allowed us to do that, while maintaining an affordable grid that's drawing in all kinds of foreign direct investment, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so the astute observers of the climate would recognise that the climate in Ontario, in Toronto in particular, is quite different to the climate in Australia. Is one of the reasons why you've had to go down this path is because you really don't have the ability to generate the electricity via solar in particular. Wind maybe, but solar not so much. And that many of the opponents of nuclear would say that really that the solar energy generation and the wind is going to be significantly cheaper long term than the nuclear generation. What's your own experience?
Well, we have seen the previous government here in Ontario that went full speed ahead on renewables, and they were paying way over market cost for that electricity, 8 to 10 times more than what we say we're getting from our nuclear fleet. At 8 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour, they were paying 60 to 80 cents a kilowatt hour for intermittent, unreliable renewable power from mostly wind and solar installations that just aren't there when you need them a lot of the time. The capacity factor is very low here in Ontario. Obviously, sounds elementary, but the sun doesn't shine at night, so your solar disappears at night. The wind sometimes and quite often only produces at night. Both of them have capacity factors, meaning they're there only about 25 to 35% of the time, whereas the nuclear facilities that we have in Ontario are there 94 to 97% of the time. They're there 365 days a year, 24/7. You can count on them. And we have counted on them for the last 40 to 50 years in Ontario.
So then take me to another aspect of this, and that is that Canada itself is the second largest processor and miner of uranium oxide. Australia is the third largest processor and miner of uranium oxide and also exports pretty much the lot of it. There is some irony that Canada is actually using the product that it mines and processes. Australia is sending the rest of it to the rest of the world to generate electricity.
Yeah, and we're putting it to good use here in Canada, particularly in Ontario. Most of the uranium is coming from northern Saskatchewan, and we're using that uranium in our CANDU reactors, 18 of them here in Ontario and another one on the East Coast in New Brunswick, Point Lepreau. And actually, that uranium is going to continue to be used in our small modular reactors as well in jurisdictions, in provinces like Saskatchewan that currently aren't producing nuclear power. They're producing the uranium that we need, but they're looking forward to putting these small modular reactors in the province of Saskatchewan to help them do what we've already done in Ontario, eliminate coal-fired generation. And the beauty of the small modular reactor, Ross, is that you're going to be able to locate these SMRs at the site of a coal plant because the transmission is already there. One day you shut off the coal plant, and as soon as you do that, you flick on the switch to this emissions-free, reliable baseload SMR.
And so then you've got the other situation, even in your own country, of the federal government. What sort of obstacles have you had? What sort of legislation have they brought in? Because they too have actually had to really grapple in some ways with the rapid expansion of your nuclear output in Ontario.
Yeah, they've changed their position significantly on nuclear over the last number of years and have actually been a very enabling partner to help us move forward in expanding our nuclear fleet here in Canada, particularly in Ontario. They realize that if we want to hit the climate targets that have been set by the federal government, that there's really only one way that you can do that, and that's with reliable, affordable baseload power that really only comes from small modular reactors or large reactors. And so we've seen them bring in some help with Canada Infrastructure Bank through other programs to enable our nuclear regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, to create a framework for siting small modular reactors, not just for our own province or our own country, but also our regulator has been a leader globally in working with other countries around the world, like Poland, for instance, that's looking to do the same thing that we've done in Ontario, one of the largest polluters in the world, mostly reliant on coal-fired power, or ironically, some nuclear power from Ukraine next door. But they're looking at doing the same thing, installing these small modular reactors at current coal sites and allowing them to clean the air and get the energy autonomy and energy security that they're looking for in the face of the Russian invasion in Ukraine.
And you mentioned earlier on one thing about the amount of investment that's come into Canada. Industry has come in there. Is that possible without having cheap, affordable and reliable electricity supply?
Listen, Ross, it wasn't that long ago. It was probably 8 years ago when the previous government was in power here in Ontario that global automakers were sounding the alarm bells, saying that Ontario was the least competitive jurisdiction in North America to build cars. In the last 6 years, we've been able to turn that around, and we're seeing all 5 of the current automakers that we have in Ontario putting in new multi-billion-dollar plants to build electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and even ICE engine vehicles. And those same companies are building electric vehicle battery plants here. So you have to have an affordable, reliable baseload system. And it's because of the Powering Ontario's growth plan that we put in the window for the world to see. And the fact that we have a 90% clean grid, one of the cleanest in the world, that is going to be expanding its nuclear profile, that we're seeing the massive investments that we're seeing here. So we like the path that we're on, especially when you compare where we are next to our neighbor in Quebec, for instance. They've been fully reliant on hydroelectric power for many, many years, and they've had an abundance of it. But their energy minister came out just last week saying that, they're going to have an electricity and energy shortage in the next 10 years, and they're going to have to turn away investments because they're simply not going to have the power. We're not going to be in that position because of the investments we're making, particularly the ones that we're making in nuclear.